Cyprian Ivanov. How does Scientology distinguish between Hubbard's policies that seem to have been directed to a particular problem in time or place, like splitting AOLA, and those which seem to be part of a broader body of reasoning, like the lower conditions? There seems to have been uneven changes in policies and their interpretation over time, but no visible methodology of interpretation other than Miscavige's word. Hey, thanks for the question, Cyprian. So let me break this down a little bit because L. Ron Hubbard sort of organically grew this organization called the Church of Scientology over a course of decades. And in doing so, he ran the organization through various written policies and issues. And these are broken down into issue types. Different kinds of issues depending for different areas of Scientology or covering different topics or subjects. And there were probably, I've never done a full count, but probably something on the order of about, 30 or 40 different issue types. And by issue type, I mean Hubbard would mimeograph. He would have copied off the issues, that piece of paper with the writing on it, and it was different colored ink on different colored papers that would distinguish one issue type from another. So you could see visually right off that if it was red ink on white paper, that was a Hubbard Communications Office bulletin. And that had to do with Scientology methods and techniques and technology and how you go about helping one other individual or doing auditing or the administration of auditing and that kind of thing. Those were bulletins. Then you had policy letters, which were green ink on white paper. Those were policies for the entire organization. And prior to the Sea Org being around, this was the policy letters were the only real, issues on how organizations should be put together and stuff. Actually, I shouldn't say they were the only type, but they were the most important type. They were the embracive policy for how all Scientology organizations should operate. That's what I meant by that. So then you had other issue types come up over the years that Hubbard would use or invent in order to solve certain problems or deal with certain types of situations. For example, you have a few different kinds of executive directives, and these are only good for a year. So those could be black ink on blue paper or blue ink on white paper. There were different kinds of executive directives, but generally speaking, they were only supposed to last in terms of order or in terms of how long they have authority for a year. Solve a particular problem, deal with a particular organization, deal with a particular situation. But all of these issues were broad. They were meant for, generally speaking, they were meant for all organizations. You wouldn't find a policy letter only for Keokuk or a bulletin only for Joe Auditor. It was for all auditors or all organizations. And then the Sea Org came around and you had a whole bunch of new issue types come into play, most importantly the flag orders or the FOs. And those are the senior issue type within the Sea Org. Similar to Scientology policy letters for the regular Scientology organizations, flag orders exist for the Sea Org. So you'll never really see too many flag orders getting down to the local city level churches. They don't have any need for them. Most of the flag orders are confidential because they're for the Sea Org only. Occasionally you'll get quotes from them or you'll see flag orders filter down, but the volumes of them and the packs of flag orders are really restricted to Sea Org bases. You also have other Sea Org specific issues like Central Bureau orders, CBOs, or AIDS orders, which were issues written by L. Ron Hubbard's aides. But they were also sometimes written by L. Ron Hubbard too. And those would mostly contain evaluations of orgs. So I obviously from memory can't sit here and do a full breakdown on all the different issue types, but I think you get the idea that there was a lot of different kinds of Hubbard directives and policy letters and issues. And the way Scientologists are told to deal with this is there is a policy letter that was written, which all the staff read, which very specifically states that Hubbard Communications Office bulletins and Hubbard Communications Office policy letters are the senior of all the things that exist in Scientology. Those are the senior orders. If there is ever a conflict between a bulletin or a policy letter and some other issue type, the bulletin or the policy letter is what takes precedence. Now, if you have a specific, let's say you had an evaluation done on an organization and there was this AIDS order, this AO that was written that laid out the evaluation. Here's the situation with this org. Here's what we're going to do about it. Here are the sequence of steps to handle it. If one of those targets listed in the AIDS order were to violate a policy letter, then it wouldn't be a good AIDS order. I mean, that's no good, right? You can't have that usurping what a policy letter says. If there is no conflict, then it's really a matter of local judgment as to whether you're going to apply that issue in coordination with the policies and bulletins that you have, or whether you need to make a judgment call there. Hubbard said that when you apply policies, there was a policy letter that he wrote, I think, called organization, the design of the organization, and there was also another one called seniority of issues. And I think between these various policies, he basically laid out this principle that you always interpret policy in the direction of expanding things, of expanding Scientology, of making it grow. So if there was going to be a conflict, or there was going to be a question about, well, should we send out 100 letters, or should we be sending out, does this thing seem to imply maybe we should be sending 1,000 letters? You'd probably go in the direction of the 1,000 letters versus the 100, because you are wanting more work, more expansion, more people coming in. But that can be a little bit of a tricky thing. You don't always, know where the future lies with this stuff, but that's the direction you're trying to go in. Local, Hubbard would write various things for Sea Org bases that were specific to that Sea Org base. You wouldn't then take that and apply it to another Sea Org base all the time. But somebody like, if somebody were to do that and it were to result in, in things improving and things getting better, then the guy would probably get a pat on the back, right? He'd probably, hey, that's a, good job on that. Good job on showing that initiative. But if it pissed somebody off, if it cut across a senior, policy or another, another senior official's wishes or desires, then you might end up in the stew. You might end up in trouble. And if Miscavige doesn't like what you're doing, regardless of whether of statistics going up or down, that's not how he goes about making his decisions. So if he's pissed at you, or he doesn't like what you've done, it doesn't matter what Hubbard wrote in his policies. Somehow, some way, they're going to reinterpret it so you're in trouble. So that's kind of how it goes. And I sort of laugh it off, but people have gotten into some real serious trouble, RPF'd, etc., even kicked out of Scientology over this kind of thing. And often interpretation, I'll comment also, often it is necessary, because there were vast areas where Hubbard didn't really write any policy about what to do here in this circumstance, or he wrote some policy, but it doesn't really seem to fit anymore, like letter writing. I mean, how do you, people don't really dig on handwritten letters anymore from people, so why are you still writing handwritten letters to people? Well, Hubbard says to, but it's it actually kind of creates worse public relations imaging for Scientology. They get these childlike, scribbled notes from Scientology staff members being sent out to the public saying, hey, you bought Dianetics 10 years ago, why don't you come in? This is just, people look at that and think Scientology's crazy, but they keep doing it because the policy says to. So you get kind of anachronistic kind of behavior coming out of Scientology because of that, or just stupid behavior, but people do it anyway. So, the interpretation of this stuff is really, I wish there were hard and fast rules for this, and I've tried to give you a couple of the rules that Scientologists have in their heads to try to think with how they should apply, conflicting policies or figure out policy for areas where there is none. You want to expand Scientology, you want to bring more people in, and you want things to go in that direction. And that's, if there's any hard and fast rule, that would be it. But it's, sometimes you can be doing that and still get hit, basically, is my point, because somebody just doesn't like what you're doing or doesn't like your attitude about it, or Miscavige has some other plan and he doesn't want that being done right now because he wants something else being done. So that's kind of how that breaks down. I hope that gives some more, is sort of informative as to how the breakdown of that stuff works. It's pretty arbitrary. But those are the rules.